February 27, 1942, just past midnight. High above the frozen English Channel, inside a vibrating aircraft, 120 men wait in silence. The red light glows. No one speaks. You can hear it, the deep mechanical hum of the engines, the metallic rattle of the fuselage, the faint hiss of oxygen mixing with cold air. And beneath it all, the quiet rhythmic breathing of men about to jump into darkness. Major John D. Frost stands near the open door, his gloved hand gripping the frame. The wind claws into the aircraft, biting through layers of uniform and wool. Below them is occupied France, black, hostile, waiting. No flares, no warning, just the void. Somewhere out there, hidden along the cliffs near Bruneval, sits something far more dangerous than guns or soldiers. A machine. A German radar installation, the Würzburg. Hitler's eyes. And tonight, Britain intends to steal them. The green light snaps on. One by one the men move. No hesitation. No second chances. They step forward and disappear into the night. The sky swallows them whole. For a brief, terrifying moment, each man exists in nothing but wind and darkness. Parachutes snap open like gunfire, jerking bodies upward before lowering them silently toward enemy ground. Below, the coastline of Normandy is barely visible, a jagged outline against the sea. The cliffs rise like a wall, cold and unforgiving. Somewhere beyond them, German sentries patrol, unaware that death, and something far stranger, is descending from above. You can almost feel it. That moment suspended in air. The realization, there is no turning back. The first boots hit the ground hard. Too hard. One man stumbles, rolling through frozen grass. Another lands in a shallow ditch, cursing under his breath. Equipment clatters softly. Rifles, packs, explosives. The drop is scattered. Not disastrously, but enough. And time is already slipping. Frost lands moments later, steadying himself instantly. His training takes over. No panic. No wasted motion. He whispers into the dark. Rally. Shapes begin to emerge, shadowy figures moving low, gathering, counting, faces pale under moonlight, eyes alert. But not all of them are here. A handful of men are missing. Some dropped too far, some lost in the dark, some, perhaps already discovered. There's no way to know. Frost checks his watch. They are behind schedule, and every second increases the chance that the Germans will notice something is wrong. Across the drop zone, another group scrambles to assemble. Among them is Flight Sergeant C.W.H. Cox, a man who isn't here to fight. He's here to dismantle. Because this mission isn't about destruction, it's about knowledge. Cox carries tools, not just weapons. Specialized equipment packed carefully for one purpose, to rip the heart out of the German radar system and bring it home. He doesn't need the entire installation. Just enough. Enough to understand how it works. Enough to break it. The men begin moving inland. No shouting, no signals. Just quiet, controlled movement through unfamiliar terrain. They pass through hedgerows, over uneven ground, boots crunching softly against frost-hardened earth. The air smells of salt and soil. Somewhere in the distance, waves crash faintly against the cliffs. And then, a sound. Voices. German. The paratroopers freeze instantly, dropping low. Two silhouettes appear ahead. Enemy sentries walking their route, rifles slung casually. They're relaxed. Unaware. For a moment, everything hangs in balance. If the Germans raise the alarm now, the entire mission collapses. Frost makes a decision. A subtle hand signal. Two paratroopers peel off, moving like ghosts. Seconds stretch. The sentries continue walking. Then, swift, silent violence. A muffled struggle. A brief gasp. And then, nothing. The bodies are dragged into shadow. No shots fired. Not yet. The radar station lies ahead. They can't see it fully, but they know it's there. Hidden behind barbed wire and guarded positions, perched near the edge of the cliffs overlooking the sea, the Würzburg radar, a dish-shaped antenna mounted on a rotating base, scanning the skies for incoming RAF bombers. Guiding German night fighters. Turning darkness into a weapon. And tonight that weapon must be taken apart. Frost gathers his officers. Quick whispers. Final instructions. The plan is precise, almost surgical. One group will assault the radar site directly. Another will secure the surrounding area. A third will prepare the escape route down the cliffs to the beach below. Timing is everything. They have minutes, not hours. Because once the Germans realize what's happening, reinforcements will come, fast. And these 120 men will be trapped behind enemy lines with nowhere to run. Except the sea. Frost looks at his men. There's no speech. No grand moment. Just a quiet understanding. They all know the stakes. They all know what happens if they fail. He gives the signal. And suddenly, the night erupts. Gunfire cracks through the silence. Short, controlled bursts. The assault teams surge forward, cutting through the perimeter before the Germans can react properly. Confusion spreads instantly among the defenders. Shouts in German, boots scrambling, alarms half raised and cut short by bullets. Explosions follow, small, precise charges used to breach defenses. The element of surprise is total. But it won't last. At the center of the chaos, the radar looms. Tall, mechanical, alien. Even in the dark it feels important, like something alive. Cox sees it and runs toward it without hesitation. This is his target. Not the soldiers. Not the guns. This machine. Because inside it is the secret Britain desperately needs. But already the Germans are recovering. From nearby barracks, more troops spill out, grabbing weapons, firing blindly into the night. Tracer rounds streak across the battlefield, cutting through darkness with deadly intent. The paratroopers press on. They don't need to hold the ground. They just need to take what they came for and get out alive. Cox reaches the radar installation. He drops to his knees, hands already working, tools flashing in the dim light. Panels are opened. Wires exposed. Bolts loosened. Every second matters. Because behind him, the battle is getting louder, closer, and far more dangerous. Frost watches the perimeter tightening. German resistance is stiffening. They've lost the advantage of surprise. Now it's a race. A brutal, desperate race between extraction and annihilation. And somewhere beyond the cliffs, in the dark waters below, Royal Navy landing craft wait. Silent, invisible, hoping the men above can reach them. Because if they can't, there will be no rescue. No second attempt. No survivors. Back at the radar, Cox pauses for just a moment. He looks at what he's uncovered. Circuits, components, engineering unlike anything the British have fully understood before. This is it. This is what they came for. But can they take it in time? Because now, the Germans are coming, and the night is about to turn against them. The first real burst of German resistance comes like a shockwave. Rifles crack from the far end of the compound. A machine gun opens up, loud, violent, tearing through the night with a long, ripping sound that echoes off the cliffs. Dirt kicks up around the paratroopers as rounds strike the ground, the walls, the metal structures surrounding the radar. The silence is gone now. This is no longer a covert insertion. This is a fight. Major John D. Frost reacts instantly. Suppress that gun. His voice cuts through the chaos, sharp, controlled. A section pivots, dropping to firing positions, returning bursts toward the muzzle flashes. Tracers cross in midair, red streaks slicing through darkness. You can almost feel it, the sudden compression of time. Seconds stretch. Decisions become instinct. There is no room for hesitation now. Closer to the radar, Flight Sergeant C.W.H. Cox is already deep into his work. He's kneeling in the dirt, tools spread beside him, hands moving with focused urgency. Around him, bullets crack past, some hitting the metal frame of the Würzburg with sharp, ringing pings. He doesn't flinch. He can't. Because he knows something the others don't fully see yet. Destroying this radar would be easy. Understanding it is everything. The Würzburg radar stands above him, its curved dish catching faint moonlight. It looks almost delicate up close, but it isn't. It's precise, engineered, dangerous in a way that isn't immediately visible. Inside it lies the secret that has been guiding German night fighters to RAF bombers with terrifying accuracy. And until now, the British have been blind to how. Cox pulls open a panel. Inside, wiring, circuitry, components unlike anything fully documented in British intelligence reports. He exhales slowly. This is it. A sudden explosion nearby jolts the ground. One of the paratroopers has used a charge to blow open a reinforced section of the compound. Smoke rises, thick and choking, mixing with the smell of cordite and earth. Through the haze, German soldiers are regrouping. They're no longer confused. Now they're angry. At the perimeter, a British corporal drops behind cover, reloading quickly as rounds whip overhead. He glances to his left. One of his mates is down. Not moving. There's no time to check. No time to mourn. He slams the bolt forward and leans out again, firing short, controlled bursts. Because if they stop now, they all die here. Frost moves through the chaos, crouched low, checking positions, reinforcing weak points. His presence steadies the line. He doesn't shout unnecessarily, doesn't waste words, just sharp commands. Clear intent. He sees the situation forming. German reinforcements are beginning to converge from outside the immediate area. That's the real danger. Not the garrison. The response. Back at the radar, Cox works faster. Bolts come free. Panels are removed. He gestures urgently to the Royal Engineers beside him. Take this, careful, don't damage it. A component is lifted out, wrapped quickly, passed back. Another follows, then another. Each piece is critical. Each one a fragment of the puzzle Britain has been trying to solve for months. But the process is slow. Too slow. And the gunfire is getting closer. A German soldier appears suddenly through the smoke, less than 20 yards away. He raises his rifle. A British paratrooper fires first. The German drops instantly. But the moment is enough. They're getting through. Cox looks up briefly. He can see the fight closing in. Feel it. The perimeter is shrinking. He turns back to the radar, hands moving even faster now, less delicate, more urgent. Precision is still required. But speed is survival. Then, a voice shouts in German. Loud, commanding. An officer. More troops surge forward from the far side of the compound, firing as they advance. The pressure intensifies. Frost sees it immediately. If the Germans break through here, they'll overrun the radar team. And the mission dies with them. He doesn't hesitate. He grabs a nearby section. With me. They move as one, pushing forward into the gunfire, not retreating, but attacking. It's risky. Aggressive. But it catches the Germans off balance. The clash is brutal and close. Rifles fire at near point-blank range. Men shout, stumble, fall. There's no elegance to it, just raw, chaotic violence. But it works. The German advance falters. Just enough. Back at the radar, Cox reaches deeper into the machinery. There, another key component. He recognizes it instantly. This is what they needed. The transmitter unit. Without it, the system is just a shell. He carefully disconnects it, hands steady despite the chaos around him. For a moment, just a moment, he allows himself to think. This could change everything. But then, A bullet strikes the metal frame inches from his head. The sound snaps him back. No time for thoughts. Only action. "Almost done," he shouts. But the words are nearly lost in the noise of battle. Nearby, a British soldier drags someone, across the ground. A German, alive, struggling. An operator. They've taken him. Because the machine alone isn't enough. They need the human knowledge behind it. Frost sees the prisoner being secured. Good, that's part of the objective. But now comes the hardest part. Getting out. He checks his watch again. They've been here too long. Much too long. The Germans are no longer reacting. They're organizing. And soon, they'll overwhelm the entire position. Cox pulls the final component free. He looks at what they've gathered. It's not everything. But it's enough. It has to be. He stands, clutching the pieces. Done. Frost hears it. And immediately he knows what comes next. The most dangerous phase of all. Withdraw. The order cuts through the battlefield. Sharp. Absolute. The paratroopers begin pulling back, breaking contact in controlled movements. Covering fire. Short bursts, no panic, but urgency in every step. They don't run blindly. They fall back with discipline. Because one mistake now, and the entire force could collapse. Behind them, the radar still stands. Damaged, open, but not destroyed. Because that was never the mission. The Germans surge forward again, emboldened. They know now. This wasn't just an attack. This was a theft. And they are not going to let these men leave with it. Frost reaches the edge of the cliffs. Below, darkness. And the faint, distant sound of waves. The escape route. Steep, narrow, exposed. And already, German fire is beginning to follow them there. Cox arrives moments later, carrying the precious components. The weight of them feels heavier than anything he's ever held. Because it isn't just metal. It's knowledge. Power. A shift in the war itself. But now, they have to get it off this cliff. And the enemy is right behind them. The cliff edge feels like the end of the world. Cold wind rises from the black water below, cutting through sweat-soaked uniforms, chilling skin already tight with adrenaline. The ground beneath their boots crumbles in places, loose chalk and jagged rock threatening to give way with every step. And behind them, gunfire. Closer now. Relentless. Major John D. Frost doesn't slow. Down, move. There's no time to regroup. No time to reorganize. The withdrawal must be immediate, controlled, and fast. Because they are no longer attacking. They are escaping. The first men begin descending. Ropes are thrown over the edge, anchoring quickly against rocks and makeshift holds. Some scramble down using footholds carved by erosion. Others slide, half falling, catching themselves just in time. You can almost feel it. The instability. The terror of looking down and seeing nothing but darkness. And knowing one slip means a fall that won't be survived. Above them, muzzle flashes spark against the skyline. German troops have reached the cliff. They fire downward blindly at first, shots cracking into the rock face, ricocheting unpredictably. Then they begin to aim. A British paratrooper halfway down the slope jerks suddenly. A bullet hits him. He loses his grip. For a split second he hangs. Then disappears into the darkness below. No scream. Just gone. The descent becomes chaos. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Men shout warnings. Rocks break loose under boots, tumbling down and striking those below. Hands slip, fingers bleed against rough stone. And all the while, the enemy presses closer. At the top of the cliff, a small group of paratroopers stays behind. Rear guard. They know exactly what that means. They're not just covering the retreat. They're buying time. With their lives if necessary. One of them turns, firing deliberately at the advancing Germans. Each shot is measured, calm, even as bullets snap past his head. Beside him, another sets a small charge, delayed. A final obstacle. A final act. "Go," Frost orders again, his voice cutting through the storm of sound. He's among the last to descend, refusing to leave until he's certain his men are moving. Below, the beach begins to take shape, barely visible, a narrow strip between cliff and sea. And beyond that, the water. Dark, endless, waiting. Flight. Sergeant CWH, Cox starts his descent, clutching the dismantled radar components tightly. They're wrapped, secured, but still vulnerable. One slip, one fall, and everything they came for could shatter against the rocks. Halfway down, he pauses, just for a fraction of a second. Not from fear. From calculation. He shifts his grip, securing the equipment more tightly against his body. Then continues. Because failure is not an option. Above, the Germans reach the cliff edge in force. Now they see clearly. Now they understand. This isn't a retreat. It's an extraction. An officer shouts orders. Machine guns are brought forward. And then, a new sound. A heavier, deeper rhythm. Sustained fire. The cliff face erupts with impacts. Stone splinters. Dust fills the air. Men flatten themselves against the rock, clinging desperately as rounds tear into the surface around them. Some freeze. Some move faster. Some don't move at all. At the top, the rear guard detonates the charge. A sharp explosion rips through the night, sending debris cascading down the cliff. For a moment, the German advance is disrupted, visibility shattered, footing unstable. It buys seconds. Precious seconds. But not enough. Frost reaches the bottom. His boots hit the sand hard, knees bending to absorb the impact. He turns immediately, looking up. Silhouette still descending. Too many still exposed. "Form up," he shouts, already moving to establish a defensive position along the base of the cliff. Because they're not safe yet. Not even close. The beach is narrow, hemmed in. A killing ground if the Germans push down hard enough. And they will. The first paratroopers hit the sand and move instinctively into position, forming a perimeter, rifles raised toward the cliff above. Others arrive moments later, breathless, bruised, but alive. Then, Cox reaches the bottom. He stumbles slightly on landing, but recovers instantly, still clutching the radar components. Frost sees him, sees what he's carrying, and in that moment he understands. Everything they risked was not in vain. But there's no time for relief. Because now, they have to hold. Above them, German troops begin descending. More cautiously. More deliberately. They know what awaits below. But they also know what's at stake. Gunfire resumes. This time downward. And upward. A brutal exchange in confined space. The British fire up at shadows moving along the cliff face. The Germans return fire, their rounds cutting into the sand, kicking up sprays of grit. A man beside Frost reloads quickly, hands shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion. They've been fighting for minutes that feel like hours. Every muscle is burning. Every nerve stretched thin. And still, no sign of the boats. Frost glances toward the sea. Nothing. Just darkness. Just waves. For a moment, a dangerous moment, doubt creeps in. What if they're late? What if something went wrong? What if there is no extraction? He pushes the thought away instantly. There has to be. There must be. Because without it, this beach becomes their grave. Cox crouches behind a shallow rise, shielding the radar components with his body. He hears the gunfire, feels the impacts around him. But his focus is elsewhere. On what they've taken. On what it means. Because somewhere, back in Britain, scientists are waiting. Desperate for answers. For understanding. for a way to fight back against a system that has been guiding death through the night skies. And here it is. In pieces. Fragile. Incomplete. But enough. A flare suddenly streaks into the sky above the cliff. Bright. Blinding. For a moment, the entire beach is illuminated. Every man exposed. Every position revealed. Down, someone shouts. Gunfire intensifies instantly. The Germans can see them now. Clearly. And then, from the sea, a sound. Faint at first, then unmistakable. Engines. Low, steady. Approaching. Frost turns toward the water again. Straining to see through the darkness. Through the chaos. And there, shapes. Moving across the surface. Royal Navy landing craft. They're here. But they're not alone. Because now, the Germans know exactly where the British are trying to go, and they're about to throw everything they have at stopping them. The sound of engines cuts through everything. Low, mechanical, steady, hope, carried across black water. Out on the channel, shapes emerge, dark silhouettes riding the waves, growing larger with every second. Royal Navy landing craft. Right on time. And yet, it already feels too late. Major John D. Frost sees them first, just beyond the surf line. Relief flashes across his face. Brief, controlled. Then it's gone. Because this is the most dangerous moment of the entire mission. Prepare to move. His voice snaps the men back into motion. They don't cheer. They don't celebrate. They tighten their grips on rifles and get ready to run. Behind them, the cliff is alive with movement. German troops descending in greater numbers now, more organized, more aggressive. They've shaken off the confusion. They understand the situation fully. This isn't just a raid, it's a breakout. And they're determined to stop it. A machine gun opens up from halfway down the cliff. This time, the fire is accurate. Deadly. Sand erupts around the paratroopers as rounds tear into the beach. One man goes down instantly. Another spins and collapses, clutching his side. There's no cover here, just shallow dips in the sand, and each other. Frost reacts instantly. Suppress that position. Rifles snap upward. Short bursts. Controlled fire. The British don't waste ammunition, they can't afford to. Every shot must count. The landing craft draw closer. You can hear the waves slapping against their hulls now. See the silhouettes of sailors preparing for impact, guiding the vessels through rough surf toward a beach under fire. They're coming in hot. No hesitation. At the front, one of the craft hits the shallows, grinding against sand and rock. The ramp begins to drop. Too early. A wave crashes against it, forcing it back up. The coxswain adjusts, fighting the tide, trying to get close enough. Fast enough. On the beach, the paratroopers shift position. They're not just holding anymore. They're preparing to break. Flight Sergeant CWH. Cox crouches low, the radar components still clutched tightly against his chest. He's soaked in sweat despite the cold. His hands ache. His legs tremble. But he doesn't let go. Not for a second. Because everything depends on what he's carrying. Frost moves through the line, checking his men one last time. Quick nods. Brief eye contact. No speeches. They all understand. On my signal. The Germans are closer now. Some have reached the lower sections of the cliff, finding better firing positions. Others shout orders in sharp, urgent tones, coordinating the push. And then, another flare streaks into the sky. This one bursts higher. Brighter. The beach is flooded with light. Every shadow erased. Every man exposed. For a split second, everything freezes. The kind of moment where instinct decides survival. Move! The line breaks. The paratroopers surge toward the water. Not in panic, but with explosive urgency. Boots pound against wet sand. Equipment rattles. Men shout to each other, dragging the wounded, covering each other as they run. Gunfire intensifies immediately. German soldiers pour rounds into the moving mass. Tracers streak low across the beach, cutting through legs, kicking up sprays of water and sand. A man stumbles. Another grabs him, hauling him forward. They don't leave anyone behind. Not if they can help it. The first group reaches the surf. Cold water crashes against them, soaking uniforms instantly. They push forward, wading, stumbling, forcing their way toward the waiting craft. At the front, the ramp finally drops fully. Sailors shout, waving them in. Move, move! Men begin climbing aboard, scrambling over the metal surface, slipping on water and mud, pulling each other up. But there's a problem. Not all the craft are in position yet. And the Germans know it. From the cliff, heavier fire begins to rain down. Machine guns, rifles, even grenades thrown blindly down the slope, some tumbling dangerously close to the waterline. One explodes near a cluster of paratroopers, sending sand and bodies flying. The blast knocks several men off their feet. For a moment, chaos. Frost turns back. He sees men still on the beach, still exposed, still fighting to reach the boats. He doesn't hesitate. He moves toward them. Because leaving now would mean abandoning them. And that is not an option. Cox reaches the waterline, struggling against the pull of the tide. The weight of the radar components drags at him, making every step harder. A sailor reaches out from the ramp. Give it here. Cox hesitates for half a heartbeat. Then shakes his head. No. He climbs up himself. Carefully, deliberately. Because if those components are dropped, if they're lost in the surf, everything is wasted. Behind him, more men pile onto the craft. Some injured, some barely able to stand. All exhausted. But still, not everyone is aboard. Frost reaches the last group. A wounded soldier lies half-conscious, unable to move. Without a word, Frost grabs him, hauling him up, dragging him toward the water as bullets strike around them. The distance feels longer now. Heavier. Another man joins him, helping carry the wounded soldier. Together they push forward. At the craft, sailors lean out, pulling men aboard as fast as they can. No order, no sequence. Just survival. Go, go, someone shouts. But Frost isn't on yet. He turns one last time, looking back at the beach, at the cliff, at the battlefield they're leaving behind. German soldiers are still descending, still firing, still trying to reach them. For a moment, it feels like they might succeed. Then, Frost climbs aboard. The ramp slams shut. Engines roar louder, and the craft begins to pull away. But the danger isn't over, because as they move into deeper water, German fire continues. Rounds strike the hull. Some ricochet. Some punch through thinner sections, sending fragments of metal flying inside. Men duck instinctively, crammed together, breathing hard. Cox sits against the side, still holding the radar components. He hasn't let go. Not once. Water drips from his uniform. His hands shake slightly now, not from fear, but from the release of it. Frost stands nearby, gripping the railing, watching the shoreline fade into darkness. The cliffs of Bruneval grow smaller. The gunfire fades, and slowly, silence returns. But what they've taken, what they've carried off that beach, is anything but silent. Because inside those metal fragments is the key to understanding how Germany sees the sky. And once Britain understands that, everything changes. The engines settle into a steady rhythm as the coastline disappears. Behind them, the cliffs of Bruneval fade into darkness, just another shadow along an occupied shore. The gunfire is gone now, the shouting, the chaos. Only the sea remains. Cold, endless, quiet. Inside the landing craft, no one speaks. At first, men sit where they can, on the floor, against the hull, shoulder to shoulder. Some clutch their rifles, others press hands against wounds, faces pale beneath dirt and sweat. Water pools around their boots. The smell of salt mixes with blood and oil. And in the dim light you can see it. The moment when adrenaline begins to drain away. One soldier exhales slowly, leaning his head back against the metal wall. Another closes his eyes just for a second. Someone laughs, brief, disbelieving. They made it. But not all of them. A body lies covered near the bow. Another beside it. No ceremony, no words. Just the quiet understanding that they paid for this night, in lives. Major John D. Frost stands apart from the others, steadying himself against the motion of the craft. He doesn't sit. Not yet. His eyes remain fixed on the horizon behind them. Watching, waiting. Because until they reach open water, until they're truly clear, this mission is not over. Nearby, Flight Sergeant C.W.H. Cox finally lowers himself to the floor. Slowly, carefully. The radar components are still in his hands. For a long moment, he simply looks at them. They don't look like much. Fragments of machinery, metal casings, wiring, damaged, partial, incomplete. And yet, he knows exactly what they are. He runs a hand over one of the components, almost instinctively. Not as a soldier, but as a technician. A man who understands what lies beneath the surface. This, he murmurs quietly. No one's ever seen this before. The words are barely audible. But they carry weight. Because until now, the German Würzburg radar has been a mystery. A shadow in the sky. RAF bombers would fly into darkness. And somehow, German night fighters would find them. Track them. Destroy them. No one fully understood how. There were theories. Guesses. Partial intelligence. But nothing concrete. Nothing that could be taken apart, studied, encountered. Until now. Cox exhales slowly. For the first time since landing, his hands begin to tremble. Not from fear, from realization. Because what they've taken tonight is not just equipment. It's knowledge. And knowledge changes wars. Across the craft, Frost finally turns away from the fading coastline. He walks slowly among his men, checking on them. A hand on a shoulder. A quiet word. A nod. No speeches. No praise. Just presence. Because he knows what they've done. And he knows what it cost. He stops near Cox. Looks down at the components. For a moment, neither man speaks. Then Frost asks simply, "Is it enough?" Cox looks up. His expression is tired, but certain. Yes, one word. But it carries everything. Frost nods once. And in that moment, the mission becomes something else. Not just a raid. Not just a success. A turning point. The landing craft push further into open water, joining others in the darkness. Above them, the sky begins to shift, just slightly. The first hint of dawn still hours away, but coming. Back in Britain, they are already waiting. Scientists, engineers, intelligence officers, men who have spent months trying to understand a system they could not see. And now, for the first time, they will. When the components arrive, they are handled like something fragile. Precious, because they are. In laboratories and workshops, under controlled light, the Würzburg radar begins to reveal itself. Its design is studied, its frequencies analyzed, its limitations exposed. And piece by piece, the mystery begins to unravel. The Germans had built something powerful. Accurate, advanced, but not invincible. Because every system has weaknesses. You just have to find them. From these fragments, British scientists develop countermeasures. Ways to confuse the radar, ways to overwhelm it, ways to make it blind. Soon RAF bombers begin carrying something new. Not bombs, not guns. Strips of aluminum foil, released into the air in massive quantities, creating false echoes, phantom targets, turning the German radar screens into chaos. This countermeasure becomes known as window, and when it is used, the effect is devastating. German defenses falter. Night fighters lose their advantage. The sky changes. And it all traces back to one night. One cliff, one raid. The National Army Museum would later say that what was taken at Bruneval greatly helped the RAF bombing campaign over Germany. But in that moment, on that cold night in February, none of the men on that landing craft could fully see that future. They only knew what they had done. They had gone into enemy territory, fought, taken something the enemy thought was untouchable, and brought it back. Not a victory you could see. Not a city captured. Not a line moved on a map. But something quieter, more powerful. They had stolen sight itself. And in doing so, they had changed the war in the air. Frost looks out across the water one last time. The horizon is empty now. The danger is behind them. But the consequences of this night are only just beginning. Because success like this does something else. Something unexpected. It doesn't just change strategy. It changes belief. And soon, Britain will begin to realize something new. That small groups of highly trained men, dropped into the dark, can achieve what entire armies cannot. And that realization will shape the future of the war. The boats reach England before dawn. No fanfare, no crowds waiting, just a cold shoreline, quiet and gray beneath the early light. The men disembark slowly, stiff, exhausted, silent. Boots hit solid ground again, but something feels different now. Heavier, not just from fatigue, from what they've carried back with them. Medical teams move in quickly, guiding the wounded away. Some men are helped. Others walk on their own, refusing assistance. There's no cheering, no celebration, not yet. Because even now, the full weight of what they've done hasn't settled. Major John D. Frost steps off the craft last. He pauses for a moment, just a moment, looking back at the vessel that carried them out of the dark. Then he turns and walks forward. Nearby, Flight Sergeant C.W.H. Cox is already being met by officers. Not soldiers, scientists. They don't waste time with questions about the fight. They go straight to the equipment. Is this everything? Cox nods. Carefully, almost reverently, the components are taken from him, transferred, secured. In that instant, the mission passes from soldiers to minds, and the real impact begins. Within days, the Würzburg radar is under intense examination. Panels opened, circuits traced, signals analyzed. For the first time, British scientists are no longer guessing. They are seeing, understanding. The radar's operating frequency, its range, its precision, and more importantly, its limits. Because every system, no matter how advanced, has a breaking point. And now, they know where to strike. From these fragments, a strategy emerges, not to destroy the radar, but to overwhelm it, confuse it, turn it against itself. The solution seems almost absurd in its simplicity. Thin strips of aluminum foil, dropped in vast quantities from RAF bombers. Each strip reflecting radar signals, each one creating a false echo. Thousands of echoes, hundreds of phantom aircraft. When deployed, the effect is immediate. German radar screens flood with noise. Operators struggle to distinguish real targets from illusions. Fighter pilots are sent chasing ghosts. And in the confusion, bombers slip through. Safer, more effective, the balance begins to shift. It isn't instant, it isn't absolute, but it is real. And it started with a handful of men, on a cliff, in the dark. The success of Operation Biting, also known as the Bruneval Raid, sends shockwaves through British command. Not just because of what was taken, but because of how it was done. a small, highly trained force. Inserted precisely. Given a clear objective. In, out, success. It proves something new, something powerful. That airborne forces, still a relatively new concept, can achieve results far beyond their size. This wasn't a massive assault. No divisions. No tanks. Just 120 men. And yet, the impact ripples outward. Plans begin to change. Airborne units are expanded. Trained. Refined. What happened at Bruneval becomes a model. A blueprint. And in the years that follow, that blueprint will be used again. On a much larger scale. In places like Sicily, Normandy, Arnhem. But here, this is where it begins. Quietly. Without the world fully realizing it. Back among the men who took part, the story spread slowly. Not in headlines, not immediately. Because secrecy still matters. The enemy must not know what has been learned. But among those who were there, it becomes something else. A shared memory. Of the cold. The drop. The fight. The descent. And the moment they realized, they were carrying something far more valuable than any weapon. Years later, historians will look back on that night. They will measure its impact. Analyze its consequences. And they will say things like, it changed the air war. It gave the RAF a critical advantage. All true. But those words don't capture the feeling. They don't capture the wind as the door opened. The silence before the jump. The sound of boots hitting frozen ground. They don't capture the moment a man knelt beside a machine and began to take it apart while bullets struck metal inches from his hands. They don't capture the descent down a cliff under fire, the run across an open beach, the climb into a boat as the enemy closed in. Because history often remembers outcomes, but not always the moments that created them. And this was a night of moments. Small, fragile, decisive. A handful of decisions. A handful of men. And one simple objective. Steal a secret. They didn't destroy the radar. They didn't silence it. They took it. They brought it home. And in doing so, they took something else as well. Germany's certainty. Its advantage. Its unseen edge in the night sky. They took its eyes. And from that moment on, the sky above Europe was never the same again.